All right, guys. Episode 59 of the Slumpbuster. This would seem obvious, but obviously it's not. Don't quote Hitler on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set. Make sure my mic is on. There is Dre and Juju Dog diving towards the pylon. Go for 2, so damn rude. Recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy. No way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction. Kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest. What's the basis? Pick an athlete. Let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places. Sudden death. Take 10 paces. Turn and shoot. Boys the truth. Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place. Dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Don't Hitler.
Hello, guys. Welcome into the Slumpbuster. I am your host, Juju Talk Sports, joined, of course, by my co-host, Andre Wynn, MMA Dre. On today's podcast, we welcome onto the scene. You guys go by Bota Podcast. I'm sorry, I heard mixed things as far as when I was reviewing the show.
Yeah, as a group of people, we usually roll with Bota Boys.
Bota Boys. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, from the Bota Boys, I'm welcoming in Drew and JP. So welcome into the podcast. Welcome into the Slumpbuster.
Thanks for having us, guys. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. For the uninitiated, just so everyone's familiar with whose voice is whose, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys?
All right, I'm Drew. No, I'm JP. I'm one of the founding members.
And
Drew, now you go.
I didn't know that you were done. That was quick. I am Drew, and I am another one of the co-founding members of Bota, technically.
Guys, well, we are happy to have you. So these boys are calling in from Boston. Obviously, I'm a big-time Celtics fan myself. So finally, we found a podcast where I'm not outnumbered by Lakers fans. This is a first. I think we haven't had a Celtics fan since an episode in the 20s. Am I correct, Ray?
Yeah, you're correct. And now I'm outnumbered. There's a 3-1 on this podcast. So.
Oh, how the turntables.
I know, yeah. I guess that's what COVID does to you.
Nothing makes sense anymore.
It's been a while since we've had a good off reference there, Drew, so I do appreciate you sticking with the quality post there. But
show up for Bota, baby.
But obviously, with that said, with you guys coming from the Northeast and more specifically Beantown, there's been a lot of headlines coming out that way since, the sports years kind of taking place. Well, kind of. I mean, obviously we haven't had live sports really to brag home about. But in terms of the headlines, let's see, where should we start? How about this one, guys?
Name?
You guys are obviously, in your mid-20s, if I had to guess?
Yep. Wow, nail on the head, 25.
Dead on.
Exactly. So with that said, for the last 20-something years, you guys have got to see a dynasty that has never seemed to die for everyone who's not a fan of this fan base. But how are you guys feeling after Brady's departure? Because, I imagine that's a tough pill to swallow.
Sure, do you want me to say it? Or?
I'll say it. I'll take it. Interestingly enough, you did get the two Bota boys who are not Patriots fans.
The Patriots are our second team. They're Team B, for sure, just from growing up here.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm a Packers fan personally. James is a Browns fan.
Miserable.
Yeah.
Imagine being from an area with a dynasty and rooting for the Browns.
Yeah, pretty much worst possible outside of the AFC East.
You guys have to explain how that one came about here. How does that happen? Is it just family ties?
Surprisingly enough, for me personally, I was never a huge football guy until I got into middle school and started playing a little fantasy football. And Aaron Rodgers was my first quarterback that I drafted. And so inherently, I watched more of him play than anybody else. And I became a Packers fan.
And back then, that was a good pickup for you. So if that was your first fantasy football.
Yeah, that was right at the beginning. I hopped on the Aaron Rodgers train early, so I got to see them waste his entire career.
Yeah, I know, especially now he's down in the dumps. So
Oh, I feel so bad for that poor man.
Believe me, Drew hears it from us every day.
Yep.
Well, what about you, JP? Like, tell me about this. The Browns. Like, how's that come about? Like, how do you get born into that torture?
I actually wasn't even born into it. Raised a Patriots fan. I've always loved college football. I grew up watching Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush. So that was like my intro to college football. And then I was like, after Vince Young ripped my young heart out, it just went like Colt McCoy. Oh my God, he's awesome. Bust. Brady Quinn. Bust. And that's like the list kept going of all these awesome players that I loved in college and just sucked on the Browns.
So you became a fan of the Browns.
Fast forward a bit later, I actually ended up working at Gillette Stadium with the Patriots doing players dining, and it was awesome. Like, I met players. Tom Brady said hi to me. I almost cried. It was pretty cool. But I grew such a disdain and like hated the fans just from seeing them every day that I was like, no, I'm good. I actually went full blown committed to being a Browns fan the season they went 0-16. It was an awful decision.
Wow. Well, I mean, on the bright side here, at least no one's going to be accusing you anytime soon of being a bandwagon fan. I would say the exact opposite.
Yeah, thankfully. Dodge
I know. 20 years down the road, though, when they finally do make a Super Bowl, then everybody's going to come at you, JP, and be like, oh, you're
That's cool that we're already taking shots at me. I'm glad.
It's just like normal, James. Don't worry.
Yeah, nothing changes.
On the bright side, it's here on the recorded pod. We have it on tape. All right. Well, let's see here. So with that said, if you guys aren't fans, but being in the city, how did fans react when that news occurred that Brady was going to Tampa?
One word, arrogance.
Arrogance.
It was a very different reaction than I was expecting. I'm not going to lie. People didn't seem as upset about it because I feel like with how drawn out the process was, people just kind of, I'm not going to say lost interest, but were able to come to terms with the fact that he was probably leaving.
See, I'm going on the other end of that because there were so many people we talked to, Drew, that were just like, nah, he's never leaving, bro. Tom forever. He's the GOAT. And it's like, nah, guess what? He's gone. You're stuck with a second-year quarterback.
This is true. Say that I'm not going to lie, and it's no disrespect to you fellas, but I was disappointed that no Boston accents. Like, what are we doing here? I thought that would just came with the territory here with this guest appearance.
The problem, we're actually where we live is closer to New Hampshire. So if you have a Boston accent where we're from, you're just faking it. Like if you start yeah, park the car, it's like, all right, dude, relax. Dial it back a bit.
Mine will come out sneakily if I get mad or excited about something and I start talking fast, but usually it's pretty subdued.
What if I was to tell you Aaron Rodgers passed his prime?
Oh.
Normally that would get me going, but I've heard it so much that it's a moot point to me at this point, emotionally.
Fair enough.
And there's so many factors that go into that conversation.
Okay, well,
to tag on to what Juju asked though earlier about the whole Tom Brady leaving and stuff. Mm-hmm. How do fans in the Boston area feel about Cam Newton? Because that's a very different quarterback from Tom Brady, right? Like different styles, different personas, and the way that they interact with the media and fans. So what's it been like back east for you guys?
There are so many people in Massachusetts that hate Cam Newton. Like before this whole thing, like, why we sign Cam? It's like, well, you got an MVP for under $1 million. Like, how are you going to complain about that?
I am one of the people that hate Cam Newton, but I don't think this is a bad signing by any means.
Yeah, no, I mean, Cam, I think you just had to look at it. Their situation was, you're really going to go in a year with Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer? Really? I know Brian Hoyer's had 3 trips there in New England, but one of his most recent appearances was for my Niners, and that was just pain every single week to watch him play, that I couldn't imagine having to do that for a full season, or at least that commitment. Or Jarrett Stidham, who, I don't know, was a backup coming out of Auburn, Mm-hmm. Honestly. I mean, I don't know what necessarily Bill sees in Stidham, but I don't know. What did he see in Brady again, I guess 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to at least put a little bit of trust into Bill Belichick and his scouting abilities and his system and process. And I think he does have a plan. I think getting a cheap, potentially incredibly high ceiling player to at least be there for a year, let him fight for a contract, a longer contract, and let Stidham kind of thrive off of that competition. Let him go up against a fired up Cam Newton, if he is, I hope.
You buying that narrative at all that they're planning on using Cam as this crazy wildcat quarterback? I don't. No. I think he's either starting or he's not.
I completely agree. I don't think that's Bill Belichick. I don't think that's Josh McDaniels. I don't think they really want to go that way.
No, especially with the injury list. Like, I wouldn't run him as a wildcat.
Yeah, I think that narrative is ridiculous, honestly.
Me too. But to go off the offensive scheme kind of thing, that's where I think the most interesting part of this all comes in, is we get to see the Patriots, Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels, come up with a scheme with zero input from Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
They're used to having him probably designing half of the playbook at some point. Now they have no input from him and can kind of work around the pieces that they have as opposed to Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's going to be a big, interesting year for Cam. You know, a new situation to see if he could command the offense to formulate around him. And certainly the pieces they have there in New England, that's kind of a unique mix. I mean, N'Keal Harry, James White, Julian Edelman, they don't really have, like, names that pop or wow you. So offensively, it could potentially be a very stagnant year outside of Cam. He's going to have to make some 2015 magic happen to really get that offense going, I feel. But speaking of stars leaving Boston, what about Mookie Betts? Tell me about this one. At least I can tell based off the hat, or at least I hope so with the hat, that you are in fact a Red Sox fan.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Mookie is...
Mookie. We were actually recording when we got the news. That was funny. That was a good episode.
We all just died after that. That podcast became completely incoherent once we got that news, dude.
Yeah, it was just it was bad. Just trying to read news live. The Mookie thing was kind of the same idea as Tom Brady, where a lot of people expected it, a lot of people didn't. It wasn't really like a 50-50, but when it happened finally, it was like to LA, like of all places, our like NL rival.
Yeah, that, and the other thing that I see it differing from Tom Brady is Mookie is in his prime. Mookie is going to be a stud for years, and it is just such a shame. He became so beloved. Everybody loved Mookie, and to see him go to, again, of all teams, the Dodgers, it is definitely a double dagger.
My favorite rhetoric about this like whole thing, and Drew knows this, is so many people are on the bandwagon that it's a 1-year deal and Mookie's going to come back to the Red Sox.
Please, please let it happen.
I was looking at that. I was going to ask you guys if you thought that was at all a possibility too, because that has been done before. It's not something that hasn't happened in baseball. Our oldest Chapman a couple years ago for the Yankees, they traded him to the Cubs. He comes back to them in free agency in the offseason. Occasionally, but it did seem like they burned that bridge a little bit in Boston over there. That's the thing. I think
it's very unlikely. I think it's possible, and I hope that minuscule chance comes true, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I highly doubt that.
But I do think if Los Angeles can't win this year, Mookie will definitely go elsewhere.
Maybe not Boston, but elsewhere.
No, elsewhere.
I mean, Dodgers management has been a little bit, they've been closer with their pocketbooks over the last few years as far as like handing out these big mega deals. But I do think that when you acquire a star like Mookie Betts, a former MVP, you usually have the intention to re-sign them long term. In baseball, we know that could be a little bit gross, as, we're talking about those Mike Trout deals. We're talking about those Bryce Harper deals. Soon we're going to start referring them as Patrick Mahomes deals, but I think that one might go better. Okay, well, let's move on to the third major sport out there. So obviously the Celtics, NBA restart. That's going to be coming up here in a couple weeks. We actually had a guest, surprisingly from New York of all places, say that he saw the Boston Celtics as a potential title contender. Do you think the Celtics have what it takes to get past the Bucks in the East?
If Paul Pierce doesn't say anything, Last year he was saying all this, like, we won one game and he was like, they're gonna win it all, forget the Bucks, and Giannis has steamrolled us. I think they have the talent around them. The thing that I think hurt them about the whole COVID stuff is they actually had a lot of momentum going into the late portion of the season, like pushing towards playoff. So just kind of like slamming the brakes on that. It's going to be interesting to see how they restart.
Yeah, and I think that they are in a lot of ways kind of out to finish off what they started the last year or two and kind of retooling process that they've been going through over the last year. But I think that they definitely have a chance if the chemistry comes together. That's what hurt them in the past, is the chemistry wasn't there. If they can gel over the small period of time they have to get the team back together, I think that they have a very good chance.
I mean, hey, Jason Tatum was taking some steps towards the end of the last time we saw them play, that game against the Lakers. Dre and I went back and forth on that one. Even LeBron James said he looked like the best player on the court that night, more like Jason Tate Yum. Am I right?
Nice.
Love it.
I mean, I would love to see them take that next step, but I mean, it's going to be so weird, like seeing how these teams react when they come back off of this such long layoff. Some teams were really rolling down the stretch and then just momentum just cut in half. Dre, I mean, you could attest to this. Your Lakers were one of the hottest teams going into those final couple weeks there.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We had built up some really good momentum from beating two of the teams that had beat us previously, right? So we had the Clippers and the Bucks. And so it sucked that right as we were starting to get hot and I think peaking for the postseason, things got cut short. What I do think will help the Lakers is they do have that veteran presence. So I'm hoping that the veterans can say like, hey, all right, we know how to make these adjustments. We know how to tough things out. And that's what I sort of worry about with the Boston Celtics. Like, you guys are still like, it's half and half. So you do have some veterans, but then the other half are still really young guys. And so I guess I'll ask you that, Drew and James, is what do you think? Do you think your young guys will be able to adjust in such a weird situation, weird climate?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, is that the veteran presence in this climate is huge, is, having guys that can keep the locker room level and keep guys from going too far one way or another off of one win when they get back, or, getting too excited or too down. That's the other thing about it, is it is so hard to predict anything that's going to happen coming up, because nothing like this has ever happened before. Mm-hmm. But I think we have a lot of tweener guys. I think we're not veteran, not young, but kind of right in the middle. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to come on to Tatum being able to fill a bigger leadership role, and those guys have to taking a step up, as opposed to the Lakers having established veterans. I think these guys almost have to make themselves veterans for this coming season.
See, I don't even think it falls on someone who's on the court, technically. I think it actually comes back down to Brad Stevens. I think Brad Stevens is a phenomenal coach. He's done great things with a young team. He's found a level of consistency with Jaylen that's been amazing. He's built young pieces and put them in the right spots. I think Brad Stevens' game planning comes into play and can push them through, because the East, honestly, kind of open.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, in the East, for years, for the Celtics in particular, it was just all about trying to get past LeBron. In particular, you remember, of course, that Game 7 2 years ago, which I still have nightmares of repeatedly. On the bright side, again, speaking of Jason Tatum, I get to replay that dunk on LeBron in my head over and over and over again. That was beautiful down the stretch. Too bad it got discounted by the last minute there. But, I mean, hey, coming off the Kyrie year, I'm actually excited about this team. They just have a lot more energy. There's more positivity. It just seems like, and maybe that's just, I don't know how you guys personally feel about Kyrie, but after that situation last year, I just can't vibe with that guy at all.
No, I absolutely. Just my biggest thing is, I think Kemba Walker is so much better of a fit. Just a guy that'll move the ball around. A guy, he does what he has to do, and he does it however he has to do it. Kemba Walker is amazing, in my opinion. And I think he's going to be a spark plug that's going to kind of ignite the rest of the team. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. He's probably not as good of a basketball player or athlete as a Kyrie Irving.
Overall,
anybody, would argue that. But you're exactly right. He fits what you guys do a whole lot better, and therefore it makes your whole team more productive.
Absolutely.
There's two things we do choose not to talk about in Boston, and it's the Kyrie years and Bobby Valentine Red Sox.
Oh, yeah,
that was bad.
That one physically made me cringe.
Yeah, I briefly remember the Bobby Valentine years. They weren't that memorable. They weren't really that much of something to
from the outside looking in, they weren't. But if you were here rooting for them, oh boy.
Oh my God.
Well, speaking of those young Celtics, obviously besides Jason Tatum, another young leader on that team is Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown has been very active in a lot of social causes. In the city of Boston, we did have a couple headlines come out with former Major League Baseball player Torii Hunter stating that previously in contracts, he put no trades to Boston. He said he would love to have played for the Red Sox. I think he even said he at one point cheered for them as like a kid growing up, but he never wanted to play for the Red Sox because of their fan. Now tell me, guys, obviously you live there. I'm sure you've been to more than your fair share of live events. What is that like? Is it as prevalent as we've been led to believe, at least based off the last couple of news cycles? I mean, just general thought.
It goes down to the classic discussion, let's get a little serious on this one, of racism, where just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I've never been to a game and heard disgusting stuff spewed out like that. Like, it's just atrocious. A lot of Boston fans are on that side where we're like, the hell, like, that doesn't happen. Fenway, actually, after, there was another player I can't remember that made allegations too before Torii Hunter. And then when Torii Hunter came out and they were like, yeah, guess what? We had like, I think it was 4 or 7, somewhere in that range of like removals from the stadium. And they were like, there are plenty more that we just did not get. So it's a thing that exists. As shitty as it is, sorry to swear, racism exists. And it's an unfortunate part of our city. We don't want that. That's not all of us. That's not Drew or I, thankfully.
Yes.
But there are just rotten, disgusting people
But
anywhere you
I
go.
think that's what I was going to say. I think when it comes down to it, there are bad apples everywhere you go. No city is a utopia of everybody gets along perfectly and nobody. But in my experience, I've never had any issues at Fenway. I've never seen anything crazy happen at Fenway Park, but I've been to one Patriots game in my life, and it was miserable. It was the middle of December, last week of the season against the Dolphins. That was the worst experience of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And there, the fans just get drunk and crazy, and you see people pouring beer on the other team's fans and this and that. I was like, all right, that's a little much.
Not even just the other team, Drew. You've seen Patriot on Patriot violence.
Absolutely. That happens all the time as well. I think Patriots fans in particular are just very, very stubborn. Because I have been to Packers game, and it was very peaceful.
To be totally fair, too, if you want to bring it all the way back, I think Bill Russell at one point has said that he was also throwing racial slurs in the garden. So it's existed for a long time. As progressive as we've tried to be, you can stop it when you see it, but if you don't see it, you just have to try to stop it ahead of it. Does that make sense? Because that made no sense after I said it, but I think you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, made total sense.
Yeah, we get what you're trying to say. Well, hopefully, we can all be better as fans. There's way better, more productive ways to disparage the other team's players than to be dropping racial epithet. So
let's focus on their abilities and everything on the field and not worry about the color of their skin.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll call Torii Hunter trash, but I will never throw anything offensive out like that.
Just worry about the color of the jersey they're wearing. That's the important.
That's the only color that matters.
That's actually the best way I've heard that said. So
I love that.
Hat off to you.
Thanks, guys. All right. Well, let's see here. Then my last question for you in regards to Boston is I want you to rank the importance to the city of the 4 major sports teams there. So Bruins, Red Sox, Patriots, and Celtics. Which of these franchises in your guys' personal rankings, how would you put it? This could get controversial in your city. If this gets back to your hometown and people disagree, you might hear a few things thrown your way too.
I know.
Love backlash. Backlash is fun.
Yeah, Drew, you want to run it first?
Sure. This one is really, really hard, in my opinion, because I think it really depends on the demographic. The older generation football fans are all Giants fans because there was no Patriots when they grew up watching football. It was the Giants. They were the closest team. I've talked to plenty of people like that. So I think for the newer generations, I think the Patriots are probably the most meaningful based on their success. But I think for older generations, the Boston sports teams that mean the most are probably the Celtics and the Bruins. I know so many people that are just such diehard Bruins fans, and so do you, James. And of all of the sporting events, energy at Bruins games is the craziest, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And the Celtics' success, I think, makes them very endeared to the generation that watched them succeed so heavily.
So are you ranking the Red Sox last in that mix?
Are you, Drew? Tell me.
That's the hard part, is figuring out where everybody fits in. There's just so many factors. I would say it goes overall, I think the Bruins are number 1. Then I'm going to go Patriots, then Red Sox. Then Celtics, then Red Sox. I'm going to put the Red Sox last.
Wow. Okay. Well, James.
It hurts, but...
That was awful. That was so bad. We have to have a talk later, Drew.
We can talk about it.
I think just because of how, like you said, the older generation, I think because of how long the Red Sox have been our city. Like, if you go to Fenway Park, the city feels like it's, like, built around it. I'm going to go Red Sox 1, my 1 seed. 2, I'm going to agree. A lot of people sleep on them, but the Bruins, definitely the 2. The energy in those games, like around the Garden when it happens. I think I'm going to lock Patriots at 3, just because I think I'm going to get some backlash for this one. I think there's a lot of fair-weather Patriot fans, and I think that's about to fall off real quick. And then I guess I'll finish with the Celtics, which still isn't fair. It's not fair to do to them.
It's so hard.
It actually, that honestly is a very tough question.
I know, especially because the Celtics have the most championships, right? Of any.
That's why I couldn't put them at the bottom.
Well, Dre, I mean, from an outsider perspective, from not a Boston sports fan, how would you personally rank those?
So personally, I didn't know much about the Bruins, right? And we all know I'm not like super huge into baseball either, but I do know the historical context of like the Red Sox. And so, I mean, just going off of all of these, I think I personally would, hearing everything, I think I'd put the Red Sox 1, Bruins 2, Celtics 3, and then I'll go with the Patriots. Because I think you're right. I think the Patriots dynasty, it's been fantastic, and it's been one of the greatest in probably sports history, but it's also been very recent and very new. And there's a lot of, Patriots fans, like you said, that are probably on the bandwagon that the second they stop doing as well, you might see them fall off, right, and jump ship. So for me, I'm going to put Patriots as 4, even though that's hard to say, right? Like we just saw that they had a ridiculous 20-year run. So, and it might continue.
Yeah.
I guess.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
I hope not. As a as a Pittsburgh fan, I hope that it doesn't happen. But
You're
I mean, you can't
Pittsburgh and LA fan.
That
And you're below
is
me?
it.
What's going on right now?
We're
Well,
from New
that's-
Mexico,
that's
guys.
We don't have anything in New Mexico. So
Well, if I had to rank them, I think I'm going to go with this. I think I'm going to go Red Sox 1 as well. And why I say that is, come on, when they broke the 84-year title drought, how that city just popped off. Literally, I could play to promote this episode, Tessie, some Dropkick Murphy. I'm going to it's going to be in the Instagram bio. But, as far as that goes, so Red Sox have to be number 1 in my mind. Then I think, and maybe this is just because personal bias, I'm not a huge hockey guy in general, so maybe I'm going to put more in line with America as a whole. Hockey's going to be in my 4 hole.
Fair.
At 2, I'm going to go with the Celtics, just because obviously they're such a rich history, most titles in NBA history, and I think the second that this team can actually pull off a title win, the entire city of Boston is going to pop off harder than any other title parade they've had in the last couple decades. And then I'll go with the Patriots at 3, just because I do think there are still some diehards that were around watching them get blown out by the 85 Bears and stuck with them in the Drew Bledsoe years and remember a time before Brady and Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my definitive ranking of the Boston sports franchises. Anyway, guys, let me go ahead and tell you our number 1 ranked sponsor. That will be manscaped.com. Go ahead and use promo code SLUMP. Here's a quick word from them.
This is a message brought to you by the Foundation for a Perfect Package.
Why do I need Manscaped?
why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Because the only frill I want is the one up top.
Because being in a relationship is not an excuse to be lazy.
Because I like talking ball, not smelling like them.
Because deforestation is proven to prevent forest fires.
Manscaped is the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped's Crop Preserver guarantees that you smell your best all day long.
Manscaped Boxer Briefs are the most comfortable underwear on the market.
Manscaped's advanced skincare technology makes nicks a thing of the past.
Manscaped is the number 1 in men's grooming. Subscribers get 2 free blade refills every 3 months. Get 20% off plus free shipping and handling with the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. That's the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Get your Lawnmower 3.0 today.
We are the Slumpbusters.
And we approve this message.
Alrighty, guys, we are back. Thank you to manscaped.com. Once again, promo code SLUMP, save 20% off. We're trying to save you money and personal male hygiene. A great way to bust a slump with the ladies, guys. I'm telling you, manscaped.com.
Fire.
Fantastic. Get that Lawnmower 3.0. Next headline we're jumping into. College sports. College sports are more unique than the pros. And remember, these guys are students first, technically.
Yep.
So if the school's not running, it's a little hard to ask them to go out there and play. Now, the Big-10 Conference and the Pac-12, as of today, have officially announced that they are going to be playing strictly conference games. So no out-of-conference, no USC, Alabama. Going to be disappointing if you like those interconference matchups, and I do. I love them. I think they're the more true test of which teams belong at the top of the rankings.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, that's not going to be a part of college football this year. First off, I got to ask you guys, are you disappointed in some of the games we're going to be losing? Do you think that we're even going to have a college football season if we're strictly limiting it to a conference schedule?
Am I disappointed in some of the games? Yes. My girlfriend, before this whole thing, or before last year, I was an Oklahoma fan just because I love the products they were producing. And she got me into South Carolina Gamecocks, and to miss out on the Clemson battle with them, which is always one-sided towards the orange, kind of sucks. But on the other end of that, still get the Red River rivalry, Red River shootout. So you win some, you lose some. I don't know. I like the interconference, honestly.
Yeah, I think you get a lot of those fun rivalry games in conference. I think there are enough to kind of cover that area of desire. But you do miss a lot of the good out-of-conference rivalry mini bowls, if you will. But I agree, you can't do anything about the current situation, and if that's how you got to limit it, that's how you got to limit it. I'll be grateful for anything you give us.
My big question is Hawaii, because Hawaii's in the Pac-12. What do they do? Because they're not. I think it's only bus, right? Or is that only NFL I'm thinking of?
I don't know what they're going to do, but actually, Hawaii. I don't think they're in the Pac-12. I'm pretty sure they're in the Mountain West.
Are they?
Yeah,
Yep.
they are.
Man, I've been wrong about that for a long time.
Hey, the only reason we know that is because we've had to watch crappy UNM teams and NMSU teams for the last our entire life, basically. Shout out to our alma maters, UNM, NMSU. You guys are doing fantastic. By the way, NMSU is super fucked in this whole thing because, well, we're independents. Like
we would play Notre Dame a bunch of times.
We don't even have a conference to win maybe one game in. That's disappointing. It's not that disappointing. I could live with a year without NMSU football. It's just depressing after a while. Actually, that brings me to a good point, though. Notre Dame. Apparently, Notre Dame's going to be playing in the ACC conference this year. What do you think of that? Do you think the Irish have any chance? I mean, going against Trevor Lawrence, Clemson, it doesn't sound like a great combination to me for them. I think Big-10 would have made more sense if they wanted to get in on any conference.
Wasn't the last conference Notre Dame was in, weren't they in the ACC before they became independent, though?
Yeah, I don't know, because they play so many of those games against, like, Michigan and a lot of the Big-10 schools anyway.
Yeah, they're big games. It would have made a lot more sense for them currently to join that conference. I'm not sure about the historical connotations of what's going on, but I think that it would have been more interesting. And Notre Dame's been up and down the last couple of years. I don't think that they're going to be favored by any means in a lot of the games in the ACC, but the ACC is not the strongest conference out there. So if they're going to have a chance in a conference, I think it's going to be the ACC.
ACC is trash. You have Clemson at the top and then everyone else. Florida State isn't relevant anymore. They still produce talent, but they haven't been anything in a while.
Let me turn this over to Dre, because I don't think I've heard any announcement yet as far as if we're still going to at least get a college football playoff at the end of the year. But Dre, the fact that we don't get to see these interconference games throughout the season, do you think we are at risk of having the most non-accurate polls that we've had in years?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And, like you guys were saying, so just to hop on, the whole Clemson and Notre Dame thing, I think you guys are exactly right, is that it's Clemson at the top and then there's like everybody else way far away. So I actually think it's a good move for Notre Dame to go into the ACC rather than Big-10, where I think they would more likely get exposed to some of like even the middle tier Big-10 teams, which are still really good, right? They run more risk of losing to them. Just to follow up on that, as far as your question though, Juju, I think we're already seeing it. Like we already see that the committee overranks some teams just because of the conference that they're in. Or, they were really good last year. It doesn't matter if they had, 20 seniors that graduated. They're like, oh, that team will be good again. And I think this only makes it worse, right? So now you've got like your Alabamas that can beat up on pretty much everybody in their conference. You've got your Clemsons that can beat up on everybody in their conference. Big-10 gets a little bit interesting. Big-12 is going to be like just a big shootout as it always is. But I think we're really just going to see rankings from people that are there. And it's going to be harder for some of your teams out of these smaller conferences to prove that, hey, we, have a valid chance at least being ranked in the top 25. And so I do feel bad for a lot of those smaller conferences where we likely won't see very many of them ranked in the top 25.
And I think it also becomes really, really hard when you're talking about the order of the rankings, because you don't have those games to say, all right, well, these are our choices for our top 5, but none of them have played each other, or only 2 of them have played each other.
Theoretically.
You don't have head-to-head metrics on a lot of ranking.
I'm super disappointed that we're going to miss out on seeing Alabama wreck USC. That was like on my bucket list. I mean, I don't like Alabama. I think I like USC a little less. Fair. I don't know if anyone could agree with me on that statement.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I am not a big Bama fan, but I also hate USC.
Like I said, they were my introduction, but
other things that are being talked about potentially with college football is also even having some conferences or some games played in the spring this year. Do you think that's a viable strategy? I mean, we've seen the potential for football as a sport has wanted to be in the spring for a while now. We see that with every year's iteration of the XFL, AFL, AAF, Double Extreme Football League, whatever, each year. But, I mean, if it was college football with the NCAA banner behind it, do you think spring football could work? It's a little awkward timing with stuff like the draft and getting prospects ready for that. But thoughts?
I think it's tough mainly because of, multi-sport athletes. You do have some players that play for multiple sports, but I don't think that's going to be a major issue. I think it would be the logistics of running 2 teams per school during 2 major teams, if you have baseball and football going on at the same time. I feel like that could be tough in a couple ways, I guess.
From a money perspective, I love it for the NCAA. That's what they're about. Because think about it. You end March Madness and you just kind of rotate right into college football. That's cash. That's a blank season, right? That's just open season for them. So if they take that window and run the spring, that's just more money in their pockets.
Yeah, JP, I was actually going to say almost the opposite. So I think you're right.
Really?
I think a lot of people would tune in from a viewership standpoint on TV, but I worry about the gate sales, right? So you're going to have some people that are like, hey, I'd rather go watch the baseball game than a football game. Or, baseball completely stopped selling and a lot of people are like, hey, we're just going to watch football now.
I think that's the bigger issue is a lot of schools' baseball programs would really suffer.
Especially in the SEC.
Plus, you have to wait until after college basketball. You can't start before that. You can't start in March.
Oh, yeah. There's no way. If you tried to have March Madness and football going on, I think there's just too much loss of revenue from people flipping between games or not attending certain games. And
but then you're losing a lot just gambling.
Yeah.
But then the other issue is the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
They have to watch these kids play these games, but if they're not finishing their seasons until the end of May, I feel like that could really complicate scouting for at least a year.
Oh, yeah. NFL scouts would absolutely 100% hate this. I think it's for the same reason that they don't want them to drop the age requirements to get into the NFL, because we see that all the time with the NBA and MLB. How hard is it to scout an 18-year-old kid and project how they're going to do at the pro level? They don't want to worry about that in the NFL. So.
And it's so much easier to just be like, all right, let the colleges do their recruiting. They'll scout them through high school, and then we can use that plus whatever happened in college and then just work off that. It's way easier than watching a kid through high school that may or may not have what it takes.
Give me 4 or 5 years of game tape to really assess if Trevor Lawrence is going to be a franchise quarterback. I don't want to have to guess off, his metrics and variables to determine whether or not he's going to be worth a $477 million guaranteed contract.
Please no.
I do not think Trevor Lawrence is going to be the next Patrick Mahomes. I will put that out there right now.
Oh, okay. That is kind of an interesting hot take. I was obviously not a planned topic, but all this stuff with college football does apply to these prime draft prospects like Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
How do you think that their stock is affected if a season does get canceled? I mean, so that's one less year for Trevor Lawrence to put some game tape out there. But I think most people are of the mindset that whoever's drafting number 1 next year is drafting Trevor Lawrence.
If number 1 has a quarterback hole next year, I think Trevor Lawrence is currently the obvious choice. But I think the thing that hurts is now we don't have a season, or we'll have a limited season for people to prove themselves other than Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is pretty well cemented in his position. I think he can only go down. But everyone else doesn't really get a chance to move up.
Because the way I'm looking at it is you already have the tape on Trevor, right? You already know what he can do. Yeah. If you can get him off of a year of eligibility with no injuries and just keep him in training, why wouldn't you? That's also secure number 1. That is a safe bet. Think of Tua this year. Tua was supposed to be number 1. Obviously, Joe Burrow had a historic season, but one hip injury changes everything.
Mm-hmm. See, I always battle back and forth with that. The argument, why not just sit and not play? And, hey, we obviously know you're a great talent. You have all the stats. So we'll give you all the money anyway. Maybe it's selfishness that I want to see them play, obviously, as a fan perspective. But 2, I think if you're a coach, you're a scout, you want to determine what kind of heart this player has. And the fact that they want to be out there on the field with their teammates, I think speaks volumes. And, I think that there's a lot of players that have battled through chip on their shoulder mentality to like establish their draft stock. It's always tough when we get to these guys that are, we know they're going top 5 for sure. But I still think you want to see the mental element of that guy. Like, is he there for his teammates? Is he a leader? You don't want me guys, you want we guys, I think is the old phrase. And I think that's what actually playing on the field does, as opposed to just sitting because you're going to get paid either way.
Yeah, and I think if any high projected draft pick chose to sit out their senior year just so they wouldn't get hurt or whatever, I think that would be a major hit on most team scouting reports. I can't say that it would be all, but intangibles are huge. Seeing how a player deals with the adversity of whatever they're dealing with is massive. And dealing with on-field, off-field, student-athlete thing is huge, seeing how they can balance everything out. There's so much stuff that goes into scouting. It's crazy.
I mean, I for one, like, the reason I love Zion so much is because that man was determined to get back out on that basketball court in spite of the media, the mainstream media telling him, nah, don't, you're going to get your money anyway. No, he was out there ready to go for March Madness, despite a blown out sneaker. He doesn't care. He just wants the ball. And I don't know. I just love that old school mentality in my athletes.
Yeah, give him the ball. And he's a beast. You give him the ball, he's going to make something happen.
Yeah, he's definitely fun to watch. One question I have, do you think student athletes will use COVID as that excuse possibly, right? Like, so it's one thing if you're just saying, hey, I'm just sitting out my senior year, I don't want to get hurt. But now you actually do have something where you could say, hey, I don't want to contract this virus. So I'm sorry, guys, my senior year, I can't go, but I'll declare for the NFL draft or NBA draft, any draft, right?
Yeah, I don't think you should be able to hold that against somebody. I mean, I don't want to get this virus that kills people, so I'm not going to play while it's kind of a big deal. Nah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen so many athletes already so hesitant to return to their respective sports restart plans. And I think for a student athlete, it's a little bit bigger thing, like these kids, some of them probably go home like every chance they have the opportunity to. Some of them are still probably close with their like parents to do that. I mean, I knew kids in college that would literally go home every single weekend. It's a little harder to do when you have an athlete schedule, but I'm sure there's some of them that obviously you don't want to risk giving it to your mother, father, grandfather, all that stuff. So potentially sitting out from COVID. I mean, we saw Avery Bradley, established star, sit out the season. Victor Oladipo's not coming back. I've seen stuff like, for example, in the WWE, like Roman Reigns, talented like star athlete for them. He has had cancer in the past. He chose not to come back, even though he was like their main guy, the main guy they were selling to everyone. So it does make you have those like career decisions in mind. The thing I'm kind of like wondering with it though is like, how much longer are we going to continue to do this? Obviously, if you're an athlete, that's going to be how you're going to make your money. That's your bread and butter right there. So the longer you sit out, that does cost you. That does cost you dollars. It costs you time because an athlete's prime isn't forever. Right. Sitting out, you could potentially lose your athleticism, everything that makes you, that defines you as a person. So COVID has definitely made things tricky for a lot of people. And I think athletes are one of those careers that has been hit the hardest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if they can't perform, they don't make money and they aren't performing. Therefore,
I was gonna say, man, you can take a break looking like Saquon and come back looking like Eddie Lacy, man. It can happen.
No, please, no more Eddie. No.
I had to throw in Eddie Lacy on you.
Man, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Oh, that name hurts my
soul. He was a fantasy football crush of mine one year, but then he just I don't know what happened in that offseason.
Oh, that man should have been a stud, but then
did he eat Eddie Lacy that year? Like, is that what happened?
Yeah, it might have been a different dude that just looked like Eddie Lacy that had just eaten the actual Eddie Lacy. It's possible.
That man was thick with at least 4 or 5 C's thrown in there. That's like what Eddie Lacy came back as. All right, guys. Well, COVID definitely has hit us hard. So everyone needs a little bit more money in their pocket. We could use a little bit more money in our pocket. So that's why I'm going to turn it over to our sponsors, RazorSport.com. That's Razor, R-A-Z-E-R, sport.com. Go ahead and check them out. Hello, guys. This is Juju Talk Sports. You like sports betting, right? Of course you do. Well, let's bust that slump. Let me tell you about RazorSport.com. Razor is a worldwide sports betting network all designed around helping you Their diverse crew of handicappers produce plays the biggest sharps don't want you to know about. Go to their website right now and sign up for a free trial at razorsport.com. That's Razor, R-A-Z-E-R, sport.com. Proud partners of the Slumpbuster podcast. Check them out and enjoy the rest of the show. And we are back, guys. So just a real quick headlines as we move towards the close of this show. I just want to bring up again something we reiterated at the start of the show. If you are thinking about quoting Hitler, don't do that. That was the case for star wide receiver Desean Jackson this week. You would think there's a lot of inspirational quotes that you could pull from. Just go onto Google and you could just find any old thing. I could just type in motivational quotes or hashtag Motivation Monday, and I'm sure I could find a dozen better quotes that he chose. And obviously, for very important reasons, I am not going to read out that statement because I don't want anyone to just clip this show and just say, hey, guess what Juju Talk Sports put out there. But guys, common sense, just don't do it. If you see the two words, Adolf Hitler, steer clear. Get out of there. This is a not safe zone.
Yeah.
Any quick thoughts on that one? PR 101.
I love the outreach of Julian Edelman, I gotta say. One of many Jewish players in the NFL, where he's taking them into Washington, I believe, and they're going to the Holocaust Museum. They're going to go through the history. They're going to talk about it. And then on the other end of that same day, I believe, maybe not, maybe they're just having like a great guys weekend, learn about history. But they're going to go to the Black History Museum so Desean Jackson can teach Julian Edelman a little bit too on the other end of that. So I think that's awesome. I think it's very mature of him. Once again, just don't quote Hitler, but a decent response.
I think it's a good teaching point for everyone on a lot of different levels. I think the main lesson for the majority of people is think a little bit extra before you post something online. If it is maybe questionable, give it an extra thought. Don't just click post. Secondly, I do think it's a great teaching point and a great role model situation for Julian Edelman to be doing that with Desean Jackson and vice versa. Educate yourself. If you don't understand something, don't think it's okay to just talk about it and belittle it. Educate yourself and understand the context of what you're about to say. That's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, you guys make excellent points. And, what's even funnier, or I guess, it's not a funny situation that, he shared these tweets, but I think it wasn't even a real Hitler quote. So he's just sharing some random quote that he's like, oh, Hitler said this. This is great, right? Like, it's like, no, do not ever do that. Like
that actually might be worse.
Yeah, it might be.
Is it worse that he shared a fake Hitler quote?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's a real toss-up. I think either side is bad.
Dude, I'm sorry. I think the worst part about it is that he posted the entire quote with the word Hitler, a comma, and quotations before it. It wasn't ambiguous and someone was like, oh, wait, that's a Hitler quote. It said Hitler said X.
Yeah, I mean, directly contributable to the Adolf Hitler.
You can't get around it at that point.
Yeah, just hashtag don't quote Hitler. Don't do it. Okay, guys, let's see here. So, Dre, UFC 251 is coming up this weekend. We already know you are going with Kamaru Usman. I am going with Kamaru Usman, but we are going to run through the card. Just a quick rapid fire here for us, our fans. So, starting off, the first fight of the evening is going to be between Amanda Ribas and Paige Van Zandt. So on our Instagram poll, 71% of our listeners went with Paige, and she is also the heavy underdog in this matchup too. So tell me, where are you leaning?
I'm actually going to lean Amanda Ribas. I think she's just the better fighter. I think a lot of people like Paige just because she's hot, and, I'll just come out and say it. Like, she's a good-looking woman. Doesn't mean that you can fight, though. So I'm going to go Amanda Ribas.
Yeah, generally when fighters start talking about other things and pursuits outside of UFC, their mind's not in the game, and that's usually what leads to it now. But if you are using razorsport.com, with those odds, I mean, plus 600 Van Zandt, might be worth a bet. It might be worth it. All right.
Everybody's got a puncher's chance, right? So
exactly. You hit on that one. You have some money in your pocket for a little bit. Next fight of the evening, that is going to be between Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas. So 75% of the audience voted in the way of Rose. Rose herself, she is going to be the favorite as well in this matchup.
Yeah, I think this one is definitely a closer of the two fights. I'm also going to lean Thug Rose. She's been a former champion. I think she's made some good adjustments since losing the belt. So I'm going to lean Rose, though I wouldn't be surprised if Jessica is able to pull it off.
Okay, so following the surprise retirement of Henry Cejudo, the bantamweight title is now on the line. That is going to be between Peter Yan and Jose Aldo. 86% of the audience went in the way of Jose Aldo, and Yan is actually the favorite. So that's kind of an interesting difference there. Dre, Yan or Aldo?
I'm going to go with Peter Yan. So I'm, again, going against all of our fans. And, of course, this is when I'll get things wrong, right? And everybody's going to be like, oh, we know more than you, Andre. What the hell are you doing? But no, I'm going to go with Yan. I think Aldo is a little bit past his prime. You know, he's been fighting for forever. I could sort of start to see the mileage and the wear and tear. He looked good at 135 for his first time fighting down there. I think he fought Morais, if I remember correctly, and lost like a split decision or something really close. So Aldo does look good at 135. But again, I think he's past his prime. You could tell he doesn't throw the kicks the way that he used to. He's not as explosive as he was at one point. And then I also worry about making weight down to 135 in the time of COVID, right? So he was able to easily do it the last time, but now gyms are sort of closed. There's different regulations and rules. And we know that Brazil's been one of the hot spots too. So those are the things I worry about. So I'll go Peter Yan.
I'm excited about this one. This one's going to be an absolute banger, but the featherweight title match between Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Holloway got 78% of the vote, but Volkanovski is also the favorite in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm going to go against all of our fans that are voting. And again, they'll probably eat me alive if they're right and I'm wrong. But the last fight that Volkanovski had with Holloway, I had originally picked Holloway. I thought Holloway's the bigger fighter. He's taller and he's looked good. Holloway's had some really interesting fights with a lot of, talented people. Even Conor McGregor, he barely lost that back when Max Holloway was young. But Volkanovski just pieced up Holloway the last time. At no point did I ever think that Holloway was going to win that fight. And maybe it was a one-off. Maybe Holloway just wasn't in the right frame of mind, had a bad weight cut, something like that. But I didn't see anything from Holloway that made me think that he could win the second time around. So for that reason, I'm going Alexander Volkanovski.
All right, and just to close, so the main event, so the third title bout of the evening, that will be Usman versus Masvidal. So that vote came out to 73% in favor of Usman. Usman, of course, is also going to be the favorite in this matchup. We're both going that way. I just think it's just too unrealistic to have Jorge cut almost 20 pounds, be ready on a week's notice to have a fight against a literal Nigerian nightmare in Kamaru Usman.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I think, short notice, weight cut, all of those things. And on top of that, I think Usman's just the more well-rounded fighter, right? So Usman at one point was an NCAA D2 champion and even, tried out for the Olympic team and was really close to passing the Olympic qualifiers. And so I think Usman just has it all. He's got the power behind his punches. Whereas Masvidal, he grew up in the streets, and that definitely gives him some, form of edge in that he is a tough guy. He's got a lot of fighting experience. But still, at the end of the day, it comes down to just more than experience. I think there's a lot of technique behind it. I think there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. And Usman's had a full camp. Masvidal hasn't. Usman's got more tools in the bag, so I'm going Usman.
All right, guys, you heard it from MMA Dre himself. So, again, if he is wrong, feel free to get at him. I don't mind. Just dropping those DMs with all that hate. Bringing it back to my favorite Bota boys over here. So, last question prior to, the obligatory plugs. We asked all our guests, favorite all-time sports movie. Let's start with Drew.
The Sandlot. Easy.
Dumb.
Ooh, perfect. Are you going that way too?
No. That's a horrible pick. We got to talk. We have so much to talk about later, Joe.
On the Sandlot? James, there's not going to be much talking going on.
I've seen that movie way too many times. Hit me with the Mighty Ducks. Single.
Ooh,
100%. Don't even.
Gotcha. So a couple of, childhood classics right there. I dig it. Sandlot, I feel like it's in a lot of people's top fives, but we haven't had it drop too much as the all-time favorite. I'm okay with it. Benny the Jet, the Beast, that's fine. And I'm going to say a controversial statement. I don't think I've seen the Mighty Ducks in its entirety. I definitely remember getting it thrown on as a kid, but I don't think I've watched it fully, to be honest. I got to educate myself on that one. I'm sorry, James. I'm sorry.
It's all right. You guys are still great.
It feels good to have that burden taken off my shoulders. All this classic of sports knowledge. I still don't have the Mighty Ducks off of my list. I do know that the main character is Gordon Bombay. We did do some NHL trivia a couple weeks ago. Still go check out that episode. Fun episode. Had on 3 separate podcasts. NHL Roundtable. Definitely worth a listen. Or yet worth a subscription. Anyway, guys, Bota Sports, Bota Podcast. Where, how how can people stay up to date with everything you guys are doing, and what are you guys doing?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Just daily content, basically. If you want to like broad statement it, you can find us at Bota Sports on everything. You can find us, our podcast, the Bota Cast. That'll be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, soon to be Smoke Signals. We're going to get carrier pigeons. We're really trying to diversify. Mostly though, we do blogs too, so you can find us there at thebotasports.news. We added the Ohio State "the" to that, which was a very happy moment for me. Yeah, if you just like guys throwing out garbage takes, that's kind of us. That's what we do.
I think we all do that, except the difference between us and ESPN is we don't get paid millions of dollars to do it.
I know.
It's kind of sad.
Don't lie, but my gut is a hell of a lot louder. That's a word I go on.
I don't know if it's worse that we do this for free. All righty, guys. Well, thank you guys for coming on. At Slumpbuster Podcast on IG, at Slumpbuster Pod on Twitter. Go ahead and use our promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com and check out Razor Sport, RAZER Sport.com. Hit that subscribe button. Check out our website, theslumpbuster.com, for more content, articles, all that good stuff. You guys stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you on the next episode.